Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a preview for a brand new game from Ludus Magnus Studios. This one is called D.E.I. and it takes place during a apocalypse in London.
Yeah, it is like a ice age apocalypse has happened in buried London in ice and snow, and you are playing as factions of survivors trying to make a living here in this new world. Now, you are doing that by trying to appease the purebloods. These are humans that managed to survive the apocalypse relatively unscathed, either through great wealth or corporate bunkers or things like that. And they have kind of used their technology to subjugate humanity, and you have to complete missions for them and deliver them supplies, basically in order to keep them happy and keep them from destroying you.
So this is a 2 to 4 player area control in the most simple of senses. This is also a prototype that you see in front of you. However, it looks really nice as it is. As we say with all the Kickstarter prototypes, make sure you guys go to the page to see the final components. Some things you're going to notice right off the start is that the footprint of this game is huge because we have a four-player game set up. The board itself is modular, and it actually can be pulled apart, that you see here, and placed back together. And it's going to range in size depending upon the number of players participating. The other thing you're going to notice is that it has 2 sets of elevations, a ground level and then a first floor. Although there appears to be a third floor on some locations, it's actually just one elevation. It just gives it a little bit more pop when you look at it.
3D dimensions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to be moving back and forth across the ground or across the rooftops here in order to collect these resources. This is one of the core keys of the game. You're going to want to collect these resources because you'll want to turn these in for victory points. You'll also want to use these to buy cards because this is kind of a light, almost deck building hand management game on top of the area control, where you're going to be taking actions and better actions by buying market cards. And during the start of the game, you'll see we've set up a market here, and the market comes in 3 different colors linked to some outposts that you'll see on the board. There's the red, the green, and the blue, and the black market as well.
Yeah, each of these outposts, and there's a number of them depending again upon the number of players, is going to have control tokens on them, such as the red one here. When you have control of an area, and control in this game is very simple, it just means you have to have more miniatures in that area than other players. If you have control of any of these outposts, you're simply going to collect this and place it on your board. Now you have an area for 3 different feats, and these feats are all completely random and completely unique at the start of the game. However, you can draft them. They are 2-sided, meaning one side simply shows that you have to have 2 outposts in green, and when you do, there's a point in the game where you can flip this over and get some kind of unique ability.
That's right. Everyone is going to start with one of those player boards, and you'll see a space here for a champion. Every faction is going to have a unique champion that has a special ability. In addition, you're going to have those feats. And now, what Jeremy touched on there is kind of 2 different ways you can play this game. So not only is the board itself modular, you can play a confrontational and non-confrontational version of the game with some different advanced mechanics thrown in. So yeah, you can either deal those out randomly or you can draft them. You can also draft your faction boards, but your champion is linked to your faction, and every faction is going to start with one of these drone figures. There are going to be 4 drone figures in the game that represent the control of those purebloods. Each faction has been granted access to 1, but you can still gain control of others through cards and things like that.
And one of the things Ryan mentioned was confrontational versus non-confrontational. We'll speak more about how this differs in the game, but one thing you'll never have is combat in this game, which is really, really unique. Combat, there is none. It's simply area control. Now, there are a couple of the drones that will be able to manipulate or maneuver people's guys around the board rapidly and also remove some of them, but there's no dice. There's no inherent conflict on the board.
That's right, which is a very interesting way to approach this. You can still lose figures, but it is rare. And you really only have one type of figure that's on the board, and that is this scrapper miniature. This just represents your worker that's going to be going around and collecting resources and things for you. But everyone does have a champion, which is the larger gray-colored miniature. And that champion is linked to that card. It gets a special ability that allows you to kind of break the rules of the game. So you're going to see a game here in progress, but everyone is going to start by placing their guys on one of these 2 refuges. And you're also going to start with a few bridges in play. Now, we talk about traversing the 2 different elements of this game, and that is a key part of the game, is moving your units around to collect these resources, because you're going to see only technology resources on the ground and only energy resources on the rooftops. So to collect both of those, which you'll need, you're going to have to send your guys to both areas.
And in order to traverse it, you're going to need those elevators, which are represented by some built-in locations right at the start of the game, but also your ability to build them and to use them just because you own them. Now, the game is going to be played out over 4 different rounds, and each of those rounds is going to consist of 3 hands of cards. Each player at the start of the game is going to have 7 cards, plus 1 additional card that is particular to the drone that they have at the start of the game. During a round, starting with the first player, again, let's talk about confrontational versus non-confrontational. This is important because you can play it in 1 of 2 different ways. If you play it non-confrontational, the players are going to, in turn order, simply take their cards and one at a time, so if I'm the start player, I'm going to pick any 2 cards from my hand and lay them either face up or face down, depending upon how I wish to use these cards. Once I take those actions, then the next player is going to place their 2 cards, take their actions all the way around the table until that first phase of cards is done. But you can also play it confrontationally.
Yeah, if you play confrontationally, it's almost like a programming element. You're going to decide which of your 2 cards you want to use, and you're going to put them face down in front of you. Everyone's going to do this simultaneously, and then you're all going to reveal your actions. So if you wanted to take an action that might reference something another player did, you have to predict that in advance. So generally, each player is going to get to take the actions of these 2 cards that they've played, and you can take these actions in any order. Which card's on top and which card's on bottom doesn't matter. However, you can decide to play a card face down and forgo that action in order to shop at the market instead. And we had mentioned the 4 different markets out here. When you take this action, you can buy cards from the market based on which outposts you control or how many outposts you control, and you have to pay the costs associated with that. But when you buy a card, it's going to come in front of you, and you can choose to immediately play it and take that advanced action.
Or you can simply put it in your hand to be able to use on a future turn. Now, the cards that you have inherently in your hand are pretty much the same for all the players. And there's 3 basic actions you always need to consider. And the denominations on the card is dependent upon what you play. So this one allows me to take 2 movement actions. Movement's fairly simple in the game. You're going to move from one territory to the next. Most of these locations are broken up by places in the board. So if I move from this location to this location, that is 1 movement. You can also move whole groups of people if they start in the same location by using a singular movement action. Then you have the collect action. That is represented by the claw that you see here. This is going to allow you to collect 1 or 2 resources in the location where you either have your scrapper or your champion. And you're simply going to collect those and place them on your board in order to be able to use them to interact with the market. And the final one is to enlist.
Yeah, when you enlist, you're going to be able to basically bring scrappers from your pool out onto the board at one of those generic refuges. However, you can build throughout the course of the game. Some of these cards are going to let you build, in which case you could put down your own refuges. Otherwise, you're going to be starting at these generic ones. Now, when you build refuges in the future, only you can use them. So you can kind of position these around the board to allow you to place your guys out wherever you want them to be.
Now, there's 2 other types of cards that you can also have in your starting hand. One of them is going to allow you to use your particular drone. Now, each of these drones have different abilities. For instance, the Harvester is going to allow you to move it and collect resources, while the Reaper is going to allow you to remove some of the scrappers from a particular location. And you're also going to have the ability to make a refuge, make a bridge, or build one of those elevator shafts in a location where you are. But those are just the basic cards. There's a whole wide variety of cards that you can gain from the market that not only have those abilities, but have them in better denominations and different types or colored icons that allow you to do something a little bit better than what you normally could do.
Right, like some of these are going to allow you to move into areas even where you don't have the majority, or summon guys not on a refuge but anywhere on the board. Some of them are going to let you take control of opponents' drones and use those drones. But a lot of these market cards are going to specifically reference controlling outposts. You'll get to do an action X amount of times, where X is the number of outposts you control. They kind of are guiding you to go heavy focused on a type of outpost. If you can control 4 of an outpost, which is the most you can actually control, you're going to get that ability 4 times. Or you can kind of spread out and be a little multifaceted and use cards from all the different colors and be a jack of all trades, sort of.
Once each of the players has played 2 cards, again, the start player is going to pick 2 more cards, and each player is going to enact the actions from those cards. Then each player is going to check to make sure they have 2 markers in any of those 3 different colors. That's basically turning that feed over to its opposite side. If you do, you're then going to have a special ability that is unique to you for the rest of the game. You're going to do that for 1 more round, so you're going to have 3 rounds, and once that round is complete, each player is then allowed to complete one of the missions that is on the actual mission board.
Yeah, these missions are going to come out at the beginning of the game randomly, and you're going to choose either 8 missions if you want a non-confrontational game so that everyone has a few more options, or you can play 4 for a confrontational game so that everyone is kind of fighting over the same 4 objectives. But every round you're going to be able to complete a mission either that is on that current round or later, or maybe one that you missed earlier. And you're only going to have 4 mission tokens, so you're only going to complete 4 missions over the course of the game. If you complete a mission on the round you're told to or earlier, you're going to get to score the gray, which is the higher value of victory points. If you complete one you missed from earlier, you're only going to get to score the blue, which is the lesser value of victory points. So you can kind of look ahead. Maybe you want to sacrifice one that's coming later in order to build up one that's coming, that you already passed. You have to make the decision what is going to score you the most points at the time of scoring.
Once all the players have played those 6 cards from their hand or 3 rounds of cards, you're going to scoop up all those cards back into your hand, score those mission cards out, and then start a new round by passing the start marker to the next player. You're going to do this for 4 rounds, and at the end of the game, you're going to tally up all the victory points you've collected at that time, plus a wide range of in-game scoring points. Those consist of the outposts that you have earned at that particular time or that you control. Each one of those outposts is worth a singular victory point. The second thing it's going to score is the number of feats that you've turned over. If you've acquired 1 feat, it's 1 point. If you acquired 2 feat, it's 3 points. And if you've acquired all 3 of your feats, that is 6 points.
Yeah, and the last thing you're going to get points for is the resources you have remaining on your board. And you're going to get points for all the cards you bought for the market. Each one of these cards has a specific value on it. And you're going to add up all those points together, and whoever has scored the most points is going to be the winner. However, what's interesting is there's 2 ways to in the game, again, based on confrontational versus non-confrontational. If you do the non-confrontational, each player in turn order, as soon as they finish their last turn, they're going to score for everything they have at that moment, which means if I come and take all of Jeremy's outposts, he has already scored them, so it doesn't really matter for him. If you play confrontational, you wait until everyone has completed all of their turns and then score. So you can still affect players even after they've taken their actions, which means going last can be kind of powerful in that situation.
Yep, so that is D.E.I. It is an area control game with no combat, which is very unique, and it has a light aspect of deck building where you're playing cards, you're acquiring new cards, and you're using those cards to take actions over rounds to control specific areas. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do, and we will catch you guys next time.
And it's still going.